The funeral was everything it was supposed to be: somber, filled with faces I barely recognized, people who came out of obligation, some perhaps out of genuine grief. But there was one thing that stuck with me, gnawing at my insides, that made everything else feel so distant. Lucas, my son. He stood there, barely acknowledging the casket, his expression distant. When someone whispered something about his mother, I saw it, a flicker of a smirk. Then came the words, "Guess it's good timing. Now I'll actually get something out of this." His voice was flat, no sorrow, no loss. Just a statement, like he was talking about an old car breaking down. My heart sank. I watched him from across the room. He was speaking to someone, but I couldn't make out the words. He seemed unbothered, even entertained by it all. It wasn't the grief I'd been expecting, not the shock or the mourning that comes with losing someone close. No, there was something more unsettling in the way he moved through the crowd, as if nothing about today had any weight for him. After the service, as the guests trickled out, grabbed his arm before he could slip away. "Lucas," I said, my voice tight. "What was that back there? What the hell was that?" He didn't even flinch. His eyes met mine, cold and unblinking, as though the words were meaningless. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, not the slightest change in his tone. "You know exactly what I mean." My voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like I was yelling. "You barely looked at her. You didn't even seem to care. She was gone." "She was gone a long time ago," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "What's the point of pretending now?" He looked at me, waiting for some kind of reaction, but I was too stunned to answer. I stared at him, trying to process the words. He turned away, as if the conversation had already ended, and I stood there frozen. At first I thought it was just a casual conversation, but then his voice, cold and calculated, reached me. "Yeah, Mom's gone now." "Perfect timing, really," he said, almost too casually. "Now I can finally get what's mine. You know, the house, the insurance, the trust. I'm not going to let Dad control all of that anymore." My heart dropped. The words barely made sense at first, as if they were some twisted joke I hadn't quite caught on to. But as the conversation continued, everything became painfully clear. He was talking about her death. His mother's death, my wife. And he was looking at it as if it was just an opportunity to make money, to secure his future, on the back of her loss. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to process the full extent of what I was hearing. "Yeah, Dad doesn't know anything. I've got all the paperwork, the insurance files, and the trust will. Once I get him to sign that new document, boom, everything's mine." The words hit me like a fist to the gut. It was more than betrayal. It was as if he had already written his mother off, and now with her gone, he was planning his next move. All I could think was how his mother had loved him. She had given everything for him, and this was how he repaid her. I stood there for what felt like forever, my mind racing. There was no way I could confront him right now. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear him lie to my face, to see that same coldness in his eyes. Instead, I turned around and quietly walked away, the weight of what I'd heard crashing down on me with every step. The next morning, I found myself sitting in Sarah Miller's office, going over the financial papers. She was a sharp woman, the kind of lawyer who could look at a pile of documents and see things others missed. But even she seemed unsettled when she glanced over some of the papers I had brought. This is bad, Jack," Sarah said, pushing the documents toward me. "These signatures, these dates, they don't add up. Tell me what you see," my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes flickered as she scanned the pages again. "This one right here looks like it's been tampered with. And these documents, they're not even signed correctly. There's no way this could have been authorized." The papers in front of me felt like an anchor pulling me into a place I wasn't ready to go. "What does this mean, Sarah?" "It means someone is playing you. she said, sitting back in her chair. "And from what I'm seeing here, it's your son. He's trying to push you out of the picture and take control. It's not just about the money, it's about power." The words hit harder than I expected. I had known Lucas was self-serving, but this was something else entirely. To hear it laid out so plainly made it all the more real. It wasn't just that he had taken advantage of his mother's death. It was that he had planned it. He had orchestrated it. I left Sarah's office in a haze, my mind still stuck on the conversation, using his own mother's death as a stepping stone. He wanted everything, and now I was the one standing in his way. I drove home that day with one question on my mind. What had I missed all this time? How had I raised a son capable of this when I stepped into Lucas's boss's office? The man Paul Grayson had always been a distant figure to me, someone I'd met a few times over the years but never really had a conversation with. Still, I had to ask. I had to know more. "Paul," I started keeping my voice steady. "I need to understand something about Lucas's involvement with the company. You've known him for a while, right?" Paul looked up from the paperwork on his desk, his face neutral but alert. He motioned for me to take a seat, then paused as though weighing how much to say. "You've been funding this company for years," Jack Paul said, finally breaking the silence. "Lucas. He's just the beneficiary. He didn't start this company. Hell, he didn't even help build it." "You did. Your money, your connections, your vision." I blinked, trying to wrap my mind around his words. He wasn't just talking about Lucas's job. He was talking about everything. "Wait, what do you mean?" "He didn't. Lucas has never been anything more than the face." Paul interrupted. "He's been handed things his whole life. This company, everything. It's all because of you. Leaving the building, it took everything not to fall apart." Paul's words clung to my ribs like a vice, squeezing until the world I had so carefully constructed began to tilt and fracture. Lucas hadn't just been ungrateful, he'd been dishonest, playing a long game right under my nose. Back home, a restless unease kept circling. Something was missing, something I'd failed to see. Sitting still felt impossible, so the old box of documents, tax forms, investments, insurance files finally came out of its hiding place. Papers rustled across the dining table as I sorted through them until the life insurance forms stopped me cold. Too many changes. Too close together. Signatures that didn't match. A chill swept through me. Those updates weren't mine. The dates were recent. Too recent, like someone had slipped in and rewritten my life on paper. The knot in my stomach tightened. This wasn't just about company control. Lucas was after something far bigger. Sarah Miller was the only person who could help make sense of the mess, so the call went out. She arrived quickly, eyes skimming the table before locking onto me. "What's happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." The documents slid toward her. "Something's wrong with these." Her brow furrowed as she flipped through the pages. Reaching the last one, she paled. "These signatures aren't yours, and the dates forged." "Jack, this is bad. Really bad. Your son has been manipulating everything." The room seemed to compress. "So he's been stealing. For how long?" "I don't know," she said, pacing. "But if he altered these, who knows what else he's touched." The chair caught me as I sank back, betrayal washing over in thick waves. Money was one thing, assets another, but family. His mother, me. How had I missed this? He has to be stopped, slipped out before I even realized it. "You're not doing this alone," Sarah said gently. "But be smart. Don't give him room to bury us further." Fury stirred sharp as broken glass. Whatever Lucas was reaching for, whatever he thought he could take, he wouldn't get to dismantle what little remained of this family. I sat across from Sarah Miller, my lawyer, at her office, my hands tightly gripping the armrests of the chair. Sarah shuffled through the documents I'd handed her, her fingers pausing as she examined each page. She glanced up at me, her face tight with concern. Jack. She started, her voice steady, but carrying an edge. You weren't wrong to be suspicious. These aren't just discrepancies. This, she tapped the papers, is something much bigger. What do you mean? I asked. These signatures, Sarah said, slowly pointing at a page. They've been altered. These aren't your signatures, Jack. Someone's been going through these documents and changing things like the beneficiary information on the trust, the life insurance policy details, everything. My mind raced. Lucas did this? I can't say for sure yet. She answered, but these aren't just simple mistakes. They're deliberate alterations. And the timing, it lines up with everything that's been happening. My own son had tampered with my wife's life insurance. It was more than just money. It was a violation of everything we had built together as a family. My fingers dug into my palms as the full weight of the betrayal hit me. I'd raised him. I'd given him everything, and now this was how he repaid me. Sarah. I couldn't finish the sentence. My words stuck in my throat, thick and painful. We need to act, Sarah said, cutting through the silence. You can't let this go. Not now. This could lead to serious legal trouble for Lucas. It might already be too late to reverse things, but there's a lot we can still do. I nodded. The anger was rising inside me. But it wasn't just anger anymore. It was something colder, more calculated. After leaving Sarah's office, I felt like a shell of the man I'd been only a few days ago. There was no denying it anymore. Lucas looked up when I entered, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He hadn't changed a bit. Dad, he said, not bothering to stand. What's up? I could feel the tension coiling inside me. I walked toward him, my voice tight with barely contained anger. You and I need to talk. Now. About what Lucas didn't even seem fazed. His casual demeanor made my blood boil. Don't play dumb, Lucas. You've been altering documents. You've been forging signatures, stealing from your own family. How could you do this? How could you betray your mother like this? His eyes narrowed, and for the first time I saw something shift in him. Annoyance, maybe, or anger. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. You don't get it, do you, Dad? He said slowly, his voice dripping with condescension. I've been trying to take care of things. You never understood how hard it's been for me. You've been too busy with your business, your investments. I was the one left to pick up the pieces I snapped. You've been playing everyone, Lucas. You've been using your mother's death to line your pockets. This isn't about taking care of things. This is about greed. He stood up, then his face hardening. And what do you think you've been doing all these years? You've been too busy building your empire to notice what's really going on around you. I had to look out for myself. No one else was going to. I felt the weight of his words, but they didn't shake me. You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy everything and walk away. You're my son, Lucas. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me. Stop pretending like you understand me, Dad, he said, his voice rising. You've never really cared. I've been forced to fend for myself. And now you're threatening me because you think you can control everything you can't. If you try to do anything about this, I'll sue you. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. Not anymore. Then do it, my voice, cold. Do whatever you want. You've already taken enough from me. My voice shaking with the weight of everything that had happened. Lucas, you're no longer a part of this family. The trust, the company, the money, none of it's yours. I'm cutting you out. Everything. All of it. He looked at me, his face unreadable, and I knew that this moment would change everything. The decision had been made. I'd severed Lucas from the will and withdrawn all investments. The legal process was underway to protect what was left of the family's assets. But Lucas wasn't backing down. He was relentless, like a man desperate to hold on to something that was slipping away. A few days after I made the changes, I received a call. It was from an unknown number. "Dad, we need to talk." Lucas said, his tone cold, too calm. "You can't just take everything away from me like this. You've already ruined everything, but I'm still going to fight. And you know what? If you want this to escalate, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I'll leak everything, the financials, the company files, everything. No one will trust you after that. You won't be able to walk into any office again without people whispering." His words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was threatening to ruin me all to get back at me for protecting what was left of the family's legacy. But I wasn't just going to roll over. "I'm not playing your game, Lucas," I said. "You're not going to get away with this. You've already crossed a line and you've lost." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You think this is over? You think you're the one in control? I'll do whatever it takes, Dad. You can't stop me." I hung up without another word. But even as I ended the call, something gnawed at me. The uncertainty, the feeling that I was standing at the edge of something much bigger, something I didn't fully understand yet. The pressure started to build. Every day that passed brought a new wave of doubt. Could I be too harsh? Was I making a mistake by cutting him off? These thoughts didn't come often, but when they did, they twisted my insides. Maybe I was too quick to push him out. Maybe there was a chance to fix this without destroying everything. But then I thought about what he had done, what he'd planned, and the certainty returned. The next blow came when he started dragging the rest of the family into this. He wasn't just targeting me now. He was reaching out to people I had trusted for years, making false claims, stirring up trouble. The phone calls started coming in one after another. Family members questioning me, wondering why Lucas was so upset. I could hear the doubt in their voices, even the slightest hesitation, as if they weren't sure who to believe anymore. "Jack, my brother Mike, said one afternoon, 'I don't know what's going on, but Lucas is saying some things about you that I don't understand. He's claiming you're making decisions without consulting anyone. Is that true?' I gripped the phone, trying to keep my calm. "Mike, this isn't about decisions. It's about Lucas trying to take everything I've worked for. He's been lying. He's been stealing. And I won't let him destroy what's left of this family. Don't you get it?" There was silence on the other end of the line. "I just don't know anymore, Jack. He's your son." The words stung. My own brother questioning me. How had it come to this? Was Lucas really turning everyone against me? I walked over to my desk and started drafting the legal papers. I had already cut Lucas out of the will, but it was time to go further. It was time to take control. Called Sarah again. "I need you to move forward with the legal process. We need to lock everything down." "Jack, you're sure?" she asked. There was a pause, a hesitation in her voice. "This could get messy. Are you prepared for the fallout?" "Yes, I'll handle it." The financial documents she'd been analyzing for days now revealed something far more sinister than I'd expected. I stood in her office, watching her face as she flipped through the latest findings, and I could feel the weight of the news before she even spoke. "Jack," she said, her tone serious, "this isn't just about forgery. This goes deeper." "What are you talking about?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Sarah leaned forward, her fingers tracing the documents in front of her. "Lucas didn't just alter the insurance files, Jack. He's been working with someone outside of the family, someone he's been using to cover up his tracks. He's manipulated company contracts, altered financial transactions, and forged your signature on agreements you've never seen. This goes beyond a simple betrayal. This is full-scale fraud." "What?" The word came out in a whisper like a gasp. "Someone has been running interference for him," she continued, looking up at me. "I've found proof. Lucas has been working with an external partner to change crucial details in the business. This isn't just about the trust or the inheritance anymore. He's been siphoning money, hiding assets, and falsifying records. It's far worse than we thought." It felt as though the floor gave out beneath my feet. Lucas hadn't just taken advantage of me. He had methodically dismantled everything I'd built, weaving lies with a precision that suggested planning far beyond what I'd ever imagined. Someone else had been pulled into his orbit of deception, leaving me to make sense of the wreckage. A father is supposed to know his son, to recognize the signs, the shifts, the shadows. Yet this was beyond anything even my darkest fears had prepared me for. How had I missed it? "Who is he working with?" The question pushed out rough with disbelief. Sarah exhaled slowly. "I don't know yet. But I'll find out. We need to move quickly, Jack. If we wait, this could grow into something much worse." Her urgency echoed inside me. Still, before any next step, one truth pressed forward: Lucas had to be confronted. Running from this wasn't an option anymore. By late afternoon, his apartment door loomed in front of me. The moment felt too soon, too raw, but there was no going back. Hands trembled, not from fear, but from the accumulated weight of anger, betrayal, and years of trying to shield him from a world he'd chosen to manipulate instead. The door opened. Lucas stood there with that guarded, icy expression I'd seen too often. "You wanted to talk?" he asked, stepping aside. The air inside his place felt tight, claustrophobic. "You've crossed a line," Lucas came out before I even turned around. "I'm done with the lies. I know everything." A flicker in his eyes, barely a second before that familiar smirk settled in. "Everything, Dad. I have no idea what you think you found." A pulse hammered in my ears. "Drop the act. The forged signatures, the altered financial records, using your mother's death to get what you wanted, and now working with someone else to cover your tracks. Did you really think none of this would come out?" He laughed, a low, mocking sound that sliced through whatever hope I still clung to. "You think you can stop me? You've been living in a bubble for years. You didn't even see what was happening." "You're wrong." The words came steady, colder than I expected. "I see everything now. And I'm done letting you tear this family apart." Lucas rolled his eyes. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I did what was necessary. You never cared enough to help me anyway. Too late to pretend now." A bitter heat rose inside me. "Everything I have, I gave you. And you used it to bury the very people who tried to protect you. This ends today. No more money, no more access. You're cut off." He froze. Anger flickered beneath the blank mask he tried to hold. "You think you can just do that?" he spat. "You'll regret it." "The decision's made," I said, voice unwavering. "You're not getting away with any of this." The moment this nightmare felt like it had reached its breaking point, a realization settled in. There was no turning back now. Every step forward only seemed to tighten the noose, yet retreat was no longer an option. Lucas had come dangerously close to shattering everything family trust, the future I believed we shared. Whatever patience remained had burned away. Only one choice was left: fight with whatever strength hadn't been taken from me. Late one evening, the phone rang. A familiar name flashed on the screen: Michael Donnelly, an associate I hadn't spoken to in years. His voice carried a tension that immediately put me on edge. "Jack, listen carefully," he said, low and urgent. "I've heard things. Lucas isn't just forging documents, he's tied up with something bigger. My people have been watching him. He's involved with a financial crime syndicate. They've been laundering money through your company, and he's right in the center of it. The authorities are onto him." The words landed like a blow. Criminal activity. My son. The betrayal deepened, no longer confined to the lies he'd spun or the documents he'd forged. Something darker had been unfolding in the shadows. "Are you certain?" the question scraped out, barely steady. "How do you know?" "Trust me," Michael replied. "You don't want to go down with him. They're getting ready to make their move, and anyone tied to him could get caught in the fallout." The room tightened around me, air thick and unmoving. Flesh and blood or not, Lucas had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Every strange decision, every forged signature, every manipulation, it all pointed to this. "Thank you," I managed. "I'll handle it." After the call ended, silence pressed in. The situation had spiraled far beyond inheritance or corporate sabotage. Something larger, something criminal had rooted itself in the life I thought I controlled. Immediate action was the only path left. Sarah answered quickly when called. Her tone held calmness, but I could hear the concern beneath it, as if bracing herself for whatever would come next. Move forward with the legal process, I told her. We're taking this to court. And there's more. Lucas is tied to a financial crime syndicate. The authorities are watching him. Lock everything down. A beat of stunned silence, then. If that's true, everything changes. This won't be simple, Jack. I don't care came out colder than intended. This has gone too far. He's destroyed too much. It ends now. Her voice softened. We'll proceed. I'll gather the evidence and file whatever we need. But prepare yourself, this will get messy. Let it. The following days dissolved into meetings, filings, endless paperwork. Every new piece of evidence revealed another layer of deceit, another wound I hadn't realized he'd inflicted. Lucas had believed he could outmaneuver everything and everyone. But now the full truth belonged to us and there was no escaping it. Court day arrived heavy with expectation. Sarah stood beside me, composed. Across the room, Lucas entered with a stiffness that betrayed his unease. Gone was the effortless arrogance. Something in him already knew the ground had shifted. Lucas, I said, steadying myself, this is the moment you've been running toward. But you're not winning this. There's nowhere left to hide. He shot back with defiance. You don't have anything on me. You think you can throw me under the bus, you'll regret it. But when the judge received the stack of documents, the forged signatures, the hidden accounts, the financial trails, silence took hold of the courtroom. Lucas's facade cracked. Panic flickered in his eyes, sharp and unmistakable. You're done, I said quietly, a final verdict delivered without anger. There's no way out. His shoulders sagged under the weight of truth. No more lies to cling to, no more manipulations left to wield. As he crumbled before the court, the moment brought no satisfaction, only the ache of a tragedy years in the making. The courtroom fell silent after the verdict was read. Lucas was led away in handcuffs, the weight of his actions finally catching up with him. I watched him feeling a pang of something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't relief. It was something more complex, more bittersweet. There was no joy in seeing him face the consequences of his greed. Watching him walk away, knowing what he had done, only filled me with a sense of loss. Not just for the trust he had broken, but for the relationship we had lost. I had spent so many years trying to guide him, trying to show him the right path. But in the end, he had chosen a darker road. I felt the full weight of that realization. And it didn't bring peace. It brought understanding. I had always thought of myself as the protector, the one who would fix everything. But now I saw sometimes the best thing you can do is let the consequences unfold, even when it breaks your heart. The days after the trial dissolved into a quiet haze. Lucas faced his sentence. His reputation shattered, his future reduced to a shadow of what it could have been. In the span of a few weeks, he had lost his inheritance, his role in the company, and the family he once belonged to. Accepting that the son I had known no longer existed in the form I remembered became its own kind of grief, but the anger had finally burned itself out. What lingered wasn't rage or vengeance. It was something softer, steadier. Acceptance. There was nothing left to prove, no more battles worth fighting simply for the sake of preserving an illusion. Years of trying to mend what was already broken had only stripped pieces of myself away. Maybe the relationship had always been built on my expectations, on the hope that love and effort alone could steer Lucas back. But hope can only stretch so far before it frays. Leaving the house was the hardest decision yet, the only one that made sense. Packing my bags, closing the door behind me, driving away from the walls that had held decades of memories, It all felt like stepping out of a life that no longer fit. Distance was necessary. A place that constantly reminded me of loss couldn't be the place I healed. The cabin in the mountains wasn't luxurious, but it didn't need to be. Perched above a sweep of rolling hills wrapped in silence and open sky, it offered something I hadn't felt in years room to breathe. Long walks became a ritual, hours spent wandering through the nature preserve nearby, listening to the wind move through the trees, watching sunlight break through branches. With each step, another layer of exhaustion loosened. The years of holding on, fighting battles I couldn't win, began slipping away like leaves carried downstream. Solitude didn't frighten me the way it once did. In the stillness came clarity. No one to answer to, no expectations weighing on my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I didn't need to fix anything. I didn't need to be anyone but a man relearning how to exist outside the wreckage. Thoughts of Lucas surfaced now and then. I wondered how he was adjusting, whether regret had reached him, whether the reality of his choices had begun to settle in. But his path was no longer mine to steer. Every person faces their own consequences. Every person walks their own road. And maybe he would find redemption the same way I was finding peace, slowly, painfully, honestly. Giving back helped more than expected. Donations to charities that supported vulnerable kids felt like stitching tiny pieces of the world back together. Pieces that reminded me of the parts of Lucas that had once been reachable. For the first time in years, I wasn't doing it out of obligation or guilt. It simply felt right. The lessons carved out through the ordeal began to take shape. Justice was never just about consequences. It was about reclaiming yourself. Healing required letting go, not as surrender, but as survival. I had carried Lucas far longer than anyone should carry another grown man, and releasing that weight didn't feel like abandonment anymore. It felt like truth.